Before we start, this episode contains graphic descriptions of violent crime. On the morning of her last day of life, Dr. Ashley Good, a 38-year-old first-time mum, turns around from the front seat of her car and shoots a video of her baby daughter, 9 months old, strapped into her baby seat. The little girl is all cheeks and eyelashes, concentrating hard on a snack she's clutching in one hand.
What can make me feel this way? My girl.
Ash sets the video to My Girl, the 1963 hit by The Temptations, the barbershop harmony that's sweet and sad all at once, finger clicks and a swinging bass line, and posts it on Instagram. And then Mum and her girl head where mums and their girls go on a long, slow Saturday afternoon, the mall, for a stroll in the pram and some shopping. Ashley Good's a seriously impressive woman, trained as an osteopath, now working as an account executive.
Thanks so much for having me.
Here she is in a podcast episode with her former employer, Health Space Clinics, talking about the things that make her happy.
There's so many things, but probably the main thing that I do on the daily that keeps me inspired is meditation. So I meditate every single morning without fail, and it definitely keeps me in the best place. And it's something that took me a long time to sort of get into the habit of doing and committing to, because I, for so long, thought, no, I can't sit still or I can't be quiet, but it's so powerful.
It's early afternoon on a stunning mid-autumn Saturday, cloudless blue skies and the slightest chill on the very edge of a gentle southeasterly. Just a few kilometres away from Ash and her baby, another seriously impressive woman is working. New South Wales Police Inspector Amy Scott is on duty, overseeing operations for Eastern Suburbs Police Area Command. She's alone in her police car, driving the hills that slope up to Westfield Bondi Junction, a huge mall that sits atop a ridgeline. It's the highest point south of the harbour, visible from everywhere. As a senior officer, Amy Scott is working alone, listening for calls, talking to her team of officers out and about. Inside the mall, Ashley Good is living her last tranquil moments, unaware of what's looming. As the afternoon stretches on, a Queensland man walks into the mall. This is Joel Gauchi, a 40-year-old from Toowoomba, who's been in Sydney for a short period of time. He's been sleeping rough, sometimes in a car, maybe at a backpacker's joint. He lives with schizophrenia and has been struggling with his mental health since the age of 17. He's estranged from his family. Days earlier, he was learning to surf at Bondi, posting pictures of himself beaming, standing in front of a surfboard on the sand. Hours ago, he was sitting at Saigon Noodle downstairs, eating a curry. He's been around the area since 10 a.m. He's edging forwards and back, contemplating what's about to come. At about 3:10 p.m, he comes into the mall, abruptly leaves, and then returns at about 3:20. And that is when it begins. Gauchi, holding a 30-centimetre knife, begins a murderous rampage that turns this peaceful day into one of Australia's worst ever mass killings. He stabs 18 people, 2 security guards, including Pakistani refugee Faraz Tahir, an architect from nearby Double Bay, Jade Young, a 25-year-old Dawn Singleton who's preparing for her wedding. She's the daughter of famous ad man John Singleton. Gauchi stabs 2 women in the Chanel store. He approaches Ash Good and the baby, attacking the child first, then her mother, plunging his knife into their bodies. As blood pours out of her, Ash turns to 2 men standing nearby, strangers, a pair of middle-aged brothers she doesn't know, and thrusts the baby at them, begging for help. They grab clothes from nearby racks, using the fabric to try and stop the baby's bleeding, as others rush to help Ash. She will never hold the baby again. Someone calls 000. But before the paramedics and the helicopters and the tactical cops comes Amy Scott, roaring up to them all, leaping out, racing past shops as fleeing shoppers tell her where to find the knifeman. She's running at top speed, sprinting past Boost Juice, past Cotton On Kids, followed by a small group of men, one carrying a white metal chair. Amy Scott is wearing her uniform pants, boots and a short-sleeve shirt. No stab-proof vest, no body armour. She has handcuffs and capsicum spray and a taser on her belt, but she unclips her Glock. Scott sees Gauci and orders him to drop the knife. He doesn't. She shoots him 3 times in the chest.
What we know is that she arrived at the centre on the back of an ambulance report.
Yoni Bashan is a journalist with The Australian.
And that ambulance report was confusing at the time. It was a pretty chaotic moment, and it was suggesting that while there were people injured, there was also the possibility of 2 assailants inside the shopping centre. And she wouldn't have known if they were armed with knives, with guns, whether there were 2 people or 1 person or more people. And so without waiting for any sort of backup, we know that Inspector Scott has driven straight to the venue and entered the shopping centre against a throng of people essentially trying to escape. And we know that while she was trying to get inside, some of those people have started directing her to Gauci's location using their best recollections of where they last saw him. And it should also be remembered that this is a vast shopping complex and it's very easy to get lost inside. And I think it was somewhere within 10 or 15 minutes of entering, she was able to track down Gauci on level 5 of the centre, exchange very brief words with him and then neutralise the threat. But to do all that without a full picture of what she was confronting and to do so by herself is just an incredible act of bravery.
After shooting Gauci, Scott drops to her knees and performs cardiopulmonary resuscitation on him, trying to revive the man she's just killed.
There's other images that emerged from people who were at the centre of Amy Scott performing similar CPR on people inside the Chanel store and elsewhere. I mean, this is the kind of professionalism that we expect of police officers. And so, no, it's not a great surprise to see her attempting to revive the person who had just been shot, if nothing else than to attempt the resuscitation so he can be brought to a hospital, charged with an offence and then put before a court and put through the process of justice.
Paramedics rush Ash Good and her baby out of the centre and to 2 separate hospitals. Both go into surgery. Dr. Good cannot be saved. At the time we were producing this episode, her baby was still in hospital. Now Inspector Scott will go through a critical incident investigation. Here's Yoni again.
Critical incident investigations they're a particularly lonely place to be if you're a police officer, and they usually run in parallel to numerous other investigations. So obviously in this case there will be a homicide investigation into the murder and attempted murder and grievous bodily harm incidents which have been caused to nearly 20 people. And then overlaying that, there will be this critical incident investigation, which is always triggered whenever a member of the public has an interaction with the police and dies in that confrontation. So firstly, everyone involved has to be isolated from their colleagues. So in this instance, that's likely to include Amy Scott, but potentially some of the other first responders at the scene. They're not allowed to speak about what happened. They're essentially the most important witness to the investigation. So their ability to discuss the events with other people is extremely narrow, and that probably includes their loved ones. And that's also pretty challenging when the events that they've been involved with are so traumatic, as they often are. So they're treated by other police officers fairly clinically, almost like a suspect would be treated. And I know in the past that's been the criticism of some police officers that I've spoken to who've been involved in critical incidents. With any luck, the police forces have updated their standard operating procedures, but for all intents and purposes, they need to be treated fairly clinically for the purpose of the coronial investigation, to say the least.
Coming up, as Australia reels what we know about this attacker and the place where he came to commit murder. Subscribers to The Australian have been all over this story since it began on Saturday afternoon with live updates, analysis and video. Join us at theaustralian.com.au. And we'll be back after this break. Westville Bondi Junction sits right at the top of a ridgeline that runs from the eastern city all the way down to Bondi Beach. You can see it, gleaming towers rising from the vast shopping centre from most places in Sydney. It's a luxurious mall with cream marble floors where the air smells like air conditioning and perfume, and you can buy anything from a $4 sushi roll to Louis Vuitton luggage or Jimmy Choo stilettos. It's serviced by one of the nation's busiest train stations, which is underground, hot and grimy and full of diesel-spewing buses loading up with passengers to trundle down to Bondi Beach. Sydney-siders have been shopping on this land since the 1850s when the first pub opened. It's still there, the Tea Gardens Hotel, now dwarfed by residential and retail buildings. This is also a place of death. Several people have fallen to their death over the years inside the mall, drawn by the deep sunlit voids scattered throughout. In 2017, a tourist, 71-year-old Bernard Gore, who was in the early stages of dementia, died alone in a stairwell at the mall after becoming disoriented and wandering through a door that locked behind him. His body was found 20 days later.
The state's deputy coroner has slammed search procedures that failed to find an elderly dementia patient lost in a Sydney shopping centre.
Last June, a high-level underworld figure, Alan Muradian, died after two men sprayed his Porsche with bullets in the underground car park of a residential tower adjacent to the mall.
Good evening. He was a Mr. Big of Sydney's drug underworld with close bikie links. But now Alan Muradian is the latest victim of our escalating gangland war.
The choice of Bondi Junction for the crimes of Joel Gauci is still a mystery. New South Wales Police say they don't believe he was motivated by terrorism and they think he was acting alone. His family in Queensland say they're horrified by what Gauci has done. On Saturday afternoon, Joel Gauci's family in Queensland saw his picture on the news as his victims were still fighting for life and contacted police immediately.
I can say that the family, when viewed footage of the event on TV, believe that may well have been their son, and they reached out to authorities.
This is Queensland Police Assistant Commissioner Roger Lowe.
Look, it's a difficult time to tell anyone they've lost their son. Their first thoughts for us were to express their concerns regarding the family and victims of these crimes, and in particular their thoughts around the police officer who had to bravely act in such a manner.
Lowe was asked whether police should have been monitoring Gauci given his long history of mental health problems.
We have people in our society who suffer from mental health. They go about their days without trouble, without causing these type of crimes. Mental health in society is not a crime. We do not run an intelligence regime on persons who suffer from mental health. There would only be an exchange of information if a person were to present such a security risk in society that we would need to monitor that behaviour.
New South Wales Police and the coroner are continuing to investigate. Thanks for joining us on The Front. You can read much more on this story right now on our website and app. And to be the first to know about the Lemon defamation judgment, subscribe now at theaustralian.com.au.